This is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite.
Good evening. The world has never known a day quite like today. It faced the considerable uncertainties and dangers of the worst nuclear power plant accident of the atomic age. And the horror tonight is that it could get much worse. It is not an atomic explosion that is feared. The experts say that is impossible. But the specter was raised of perhaps the next most serious kind of nuclear catastrophe, a massive release of radioactivity. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission cited that possibility with an announcement that, while it is not likely, the potential is there for the ultimate risk of a meltdown at the 3 Mile Island atomic power plant outside Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Robert Shackney reports from Washington.
According to the government's top nuclear specialists, the problem is a 15 to 20-foot wide bubble of trapped radioactive gas at the top of the damaged reactor, gas that cannot be removed. Brian Grimes, deputy director of the Division of Operating Reactors, said one of the dangers is meltdown.
The risk involved is that the gas would expand, prevent cooling of the core, that we would suffer additional core damage, and with the ultimate risk of a meltdown.
That risk is real.
The risk, depending on the manner in which you figure out to cope with this problem, could be real. If we determine that it is, we'd recommend a precautionary evacuation.
If that risk is present, why haven't you urged the evacuation of all people and not just some?
Well, at present, we have a very stable and, we believe, safe situation.
But within 1 or 2 days, you might be in a different situation, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Here's what happens. You know, if you have a balloon and you put a balloon in a bathtub of water, it squashes the balloon. If you raise it up to the top of the bathtub of water, the balloon will expand because the pressure outside the balloon reduces, but the pressure inside stays the same, so it expands. That's why they burst when they go up in the air. Well, this bubble is under a moderate degree of pressure now, a few hundred pounds of pressure. As we lower the pressure of this coolant system in here, that bubble gets bigger and bigger. And if the bubble gets big enough that it gets down here, then this is gas over the fuel elements and not water.
It seems that it's a catch-22.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying to get around.
That's what we're trying to get around, is to get rid of that bubble.
The staff specialists say that all their options are risky. The simplest solution, having a man open the valve to release the trapped gas, is impossible. Heat and radioactivity would kill anyone making that attempt. The experts say that the risks of catastrophic disaster are very small. A lot of less serious consequences are far more probable. But the experts say they're not absolutely sure. Robert Shackney, CBS News, Washington.
Earlier on this incredible third day of the accident, confusion, contradiction, and questions clouded the atmosphere like atomic particles. Plant officials predicted radiation will continue to leak at least 5 more days. Governor Thornburg considered, then rejected, the evacuation of 1 million residents in 4 counties surrounding the plant: York, Dauphin, Lancaster, and Cumberland. But the governor urged that pregnant women and young children within a 5-mile radius leave the area, and he closed all 23 schools there. About 20,000 persons live in that section. And the governor told all residents within 10 miles of the plant to stay indoors until further notice. Mass care centers were set up in Hershey and York, both about 15 miles from Harrisburg. President Carter offered federal assistance if necessary, urging officials to err on the side of caution and safety. The president set up an emergency task force within the National Security Council. Gary Shepard was at the plant as the story developed.
Middletown here announces this time there's no immediate evacuation. Please stay indoors with your windows closed.
It began at 6:40 this morning and lasted until 9 o'clock. Another unexpected and substantial release of radiation into the atmosphere from reactor number 2. It produced a huge cloud of radioactive xenon gas and radiation levels 10 times the amount considered safe for the general public to be exposed to in a full year. When civil defense authorities learned about what happened, they immediately advised all citizens within a 10-mile radius of the plant, an area with a population of nearly 300,000, to stay indoors and keep all windows shut.
We are simply asking everybody to be prepared to move, but do not move at this time. Nobody is in any danger at this time.
Then Pennsylvania Governor Dick Thornburgh revised that plan after talking by telephone with President Carter and the chairman of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Based on advice of the chairman of the NRC and in the interests of taking every precaution, we've advised those who may be particularly susceptible to the effects of radiation, that is, pregnant women and preschool-aged children, to leave the area within a 5-mile radius of the 3 Mile Island facility until further notice. We also ordered the closing of any schools within this area.
At a briefing for reporters, power company officials contended the xenon gas was released intentionally to relieve pressure in the system, even though the NRC says flatly it was uncontrolled. And both the governor's office and civil defense officials claim they were told by operators inside the plant the release was not intentional.
We didn't warn the civil defense people, no. We didn't see that the levels that would be emitted from the auxiliary building would be that different than what we've been experiencing for the last 2 days. I suspect that, that venting and releases from our auxiliary building will probably take place for the next 3 to 4 or 5 days.
Later in the day, there were 2 more occasions when xenon gas was released, and during one of them, 2 workers received high doses of radiation. Company officials now admit that a nuclear reaction is still occurring inside the primary containment building of reactor number 2. It is now apparent that the nuclear accident that occurred on Wednesday morning was a lot more complicated and a lot more serious than the public was first led to believe. Gary Shepard, CBS News, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Announcement of the evacuation of pregnant women and preschool children was made at midday. All afternoon, people with nowhere else to go gathered at the Hershey Park Arena east of Harrisburg. Local officials had stockpiled food and medical supplies for 10,000 people, but only 100 or so had arrived by mid-afternoon. A clergyman doubled as a magician to entertain and reassure the children.
Like your stay here, this is just temporary. And the colors here are only temporary.
There was no feeling of fear here, but there was a great deal of skepticism. These people felt they were kept in the dark by the authorities, and they told Jim Kilpatrick they think they're still not being told everything.
You think there's more of a danger than you're being told, or?
Yeah, definitely. Otherwise, why would they ask us to evacuate?
Do you think people are giving you the straight story?
No. If it's serious, they're not truthfully going to come out and tell you because they'll start a panic. You know? So I think they're just slowly, I think they tell you what they want you to know.
Schools within 5 miles of the nuclear plant were closed indefinitely today. And in communities like Middletown, businesses have shut down as owners and workers left the area. Word of the evacuation produced no panic here in Middletown, just 3 miles from the nuclear plant, but for several people here, it confirmed what they'd intended to do all along, leave town. Steve and Cheryl Hawk are taking little Stephen and 7-year-old Lisa to their grandparents for the duration.
We're concerned because of the age of my son and my daughter because they gave the warning for preschool children and pregnant women. Thank God I'm not, but he is only 2. And you don't want to take a chance when they're this little or something that can endanger them, their lives.
Not all the adults departing Middletown are women or the parents of young children.
Just the fact that as a human being, all radiation is bad, and you do not have to be pregnant or a child to, try to avoid that situation.
What's going on in Middletown is happening in several other small towns near the nuclear plant as well. And with the situation there apparently far from being stabilized, there's no way of telling just how long it will be before people here can start putting their lives back in order. Richard Wagner, CBS News, Middletown, Pennsylvania.
Late today, Middletown officials declared a 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew. We'll have more on the nuclear power accident in a moment.